that reminds me of two instances where control audiences were completely wrong. The first one, well, I wouldn't say completely wrong, but like it's very interesting when you like take a step back. But the first one was South Park. I
Yeah,
think like when South Park was going through like their test audiences, it was bashed and panned like time again and again by its focus group. And the only reason why like it got on was I think it's because they just had like the right connections, like a lot enough people that was in the know-how. They essentially vouched for them.
yeah,
And when it got to the people out, when it got outside of the focus group, that's when everybody liked it. And and the second thing that comes to mind, it was there was a this documentary about movie posters, like the art of making movie posters, and it all started with in the beginning every movie or like a lot of movies used to start with the poster first. Like they would hire an artist, and the
right.
artist would just they would give the artist like a title, and they say make something that comes to your
Yeah,
mind when you think of this title, and then it was just up to the artist. They would probably give them some tools, some extra things, and then the artist would draw and create, and then the directors would look at his art piece, and then they would just create a story around the art piece. But as time went forward, the rise of like movie stardom and I guess
yeah,
parasocial relationships, whatever happened, uh, people started using like movie star faces. You know, as you can see, like with the modern Star Wars
yeah.
movies, like literally go to the movie theater or like cinema or whatever, and you'll just know what I'm talking about. You just see people's
Well,
faces everywhere.
Star was a good example of that. Like, don't know how controversial it will be mentioning this, but they take out certain actors in certain countries,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and it's like that. That's exactly how it works. They're trying to market that film to that audience, and sometimes
I
it's
think
a bit unethical.
I don't know. I think the funniest example of that was actually the Black Panther one, where in the America
Oh
release
yeah, yeah,
you saw like the actor's face. It was just a close up of the actor's face, but
yeah.
in the Chinese release, he had the
So
mask on.
yeah,
So so just a bait and switch the Chinese audience to actually go see their movie.
yeah,
But that was it's the things to look out for. It's something interesting. I see that and I'm like things that make you go interesting, but.
yeah. Do you sort of see how when now you're aware of it, do you see how other people are influenced by it sometimes? And
Yeah, and I think well, I guess we can go back to that like later in the conversation. But
yeah,
I want to say that the reason why movie posters moved from the illustrations to the big actors is because people associated the illustrations of the movie posters as they're probably going to see a cartoon. They're probably going to see something that was
right,
meant for children. So when
yeah,
they saw like the movie actors, the familiar face, the first thing that came to their mind was, "Oh, yeah, I know this guy. I know these collection of names that's terribly pasted that breaks the composition of the poster. Yeah, like I'll go see it because it's a movie star that I like." And I think that was mostly for American audiences. I think it mostly for American audiences because I remember a focus group between like American audiences and like European audiences, where the European audience they really didn't care that much if it was illustrated or not. But for I think in the documentary they showed that like non-American audiences they preferred the illustrated covers, the illustrated posters over the Hollywood star face posters because the illustrated posters they were more aesthetically pleasing,
right.
while Americans were operating off of self consciousness of like not wanting to walk into a kids movie, despite there's no like hint of it being that way other than the posters illustrated.
I miss some of those, like with Star Wars, Indiana Jones, like even like some of the Star Trek ones where you got a movie poster that was illustrated or painted, and it just looked amazing, like it's a work of art, and you don't see that much nowadays. It is just the main actors' faces in yeah above the
Yeah,
title, and like you don't really get a feel for the movie from a lot of modern posters.
it's it's a very much it's a lost art. I think we might, if I would have to make a prediction, I feel like we might see a comeback of that because a lot of I see modern big budget movies. I think they're at an era where it's like a snake eating itself
Yeah,
right now. So they're putting too much money. I guess especially with Marvel because that's like the
yeah,
big thing
yeah,
that comes to
definitely.
mind. Like they're we're at the tail end of maybe sequelitis is not the thing anymore. Maybe we can't just keep making
Yeah,
sequels and like movies of a bunch of products that isn't tying to the books or anything substantial in any meaningful way. I think as soon as people will go to at least like smaller budget movies and those posters will convey a more artistic tone within their poster, we can probably like reach an equilibrium again because things have to get
yeah.
bad before they get better.
I think another point is that the audience knows too much about a movie before they go and see it, and
What do
I
you
think
Can you
I
explain
felt
that?
like that's happened a lot recently. People have got probably fatigued with certain type of films as well, um, and what makes me think of that is the new Miyazaki film, uh,
Yeah.
Studio Ghibli, the Boy and the
The
Heron.
yes.
He's purposely not released a trailer for it, right? He's
Hmm.
like, I don't want people to know anything about this film before they go and see it. I want them to go in and be completely fresh, which is something I like to do. I think it's really good watching a film when you know nothing about it. It's just difficult to do in the modern world. So Miyazaki's said no trailers. I want people to come in, be completely surprised by what happens. I've no foundation for what this film's going to be about. And all I keep seeing on the internet now, it's like, come over to the Western world are trailers for this film, and like where they start auto playing. I'm like, I have to pause this now because I really want when I go and see it, I want it to be fresh. Um, yeah,
It's I have an interesting I hear so many contradictory things when it comes to that, but I feel like it comes down to personal preference because I remember I was looking at a documentary about human psychology, marketing, and like audience expectations, right? And when it comes like the reason why we have like so many trailers that essentially spoils the movie
yeah,
is psychologically we are little lizard brains like
yeah,
familiarity. So when we have something that when we have something that shows us what we're going to be going into, aren't we subconsciously think, "Oh yeah, I won't be surprised" cuz
yeah. Feel safe.
people don't like being surprised at all.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
think the most common thing was probably like this like a Scott Pilgrim anime that happened like recently.
Yeah, I've not watched that yet, but I
Yeah.
have heard um, about certain demographics and their reactions to it.
No, I for me as like a light Scott Pilgrim enjoyer, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool with what they wanted to do. People were mad. I find that as a case study of how people really don't like being surprised
Yeah,
because
yeah,
everybody expected that it was going to
yeah,
be a an animated thing from Scott Pilgrim start to finish. I don't know what they expected, but they just wanted like a Scott Pilgrim
yeah.
adaptation
It's is it more
of the
Ramona Flowers
yeah.
centric?
It was more like a of like a what if story,
Ah, right.
and people was expecting something that they were familiar with. But what actually happened? It was marketed. It was marketed as like a an animated thing, but what we actually got was a new sort of what if story where the original author was answering criticism since he's like grown up and Scott Pilgrim's like
Yeah,
a couple decades old.
yeah,
He like had new perspectives living life and he wanted to shine some lights on like what he thought he didn't do well in the original run and what he would do differently. But it was all in the confines of this new what if story. So it was like showing a different perspective of a story that people knew for decades. And
Oh,
people
that's
did,
really interesting.
yeah, I thought that was really cool, but that wasn't what people was expecting. So people just panned it. And now
Oh,
now we kind of have this whole dichotomy of people who actually like it. They get labeled as like, oh yeah, you're just into like the whole woke stuff because He-Man did the exact same
yeah.
thing, and I haven't watched it. I'm not that interested in He-Man,
No, I'm not
and
either.
like She-Ra and like all that stuff. But
No.
like but like I feel like was one of the instances that I would say it was very interesting. It was a bait and switch, but it was a bait and switch that I was welcome to because at the end result, at the end of the day, what I was served was still good.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, that just tells me that people really don't like being surprised.
Yeah.